Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Duke basketball knocks off Arizona. The Blue Devils move on, heading to the Elite Eight in this year's NCAA tournament. This is Locked On Blue Devils.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. Thanks so much for being here with us today on Friday, March 28th, 2025. Locked On Blue Devils, your one-stop shop where we talk about everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. A part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Duke wins. Duke defeats Arizona 100-93 in the Sweet 16 to move the Blue Devils forward to the Elite Eight, where on Saturday they will take on the Alabama Crimson Tide for an opportunity to go to the Final Four this year in San Antonio. Today, joining us on the program, we'll have our very good friend Kevin Connelly, who's there in the Prudential Center, got a chance to watch this game unfold in person. We'll break it all down throughout the course of today's show. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Also, watch our show each and every day on YouTube. Like this video, share it with your friends, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That means so much to us when we're able to grow that channel there and keep giving you all this March Madness content for Duke basketball. So, without further ado, let's bring him on into today's program. The aforementioned Kevin Connelly is here. He was there in the building watching Duke pick up the win. We've already gone into the Friday morning hours with such a late start here in this one between Duke and Arizona, and what a victory this was for Duke, Kevin.
Yeah, JJ, thanks for having me, man. As I sit on the floor at the Prudential Center in the wee hours in the morning, East Coast time on Friday. It was a great game. I think you kind of look at it in two halves. The basketball game is in two halves, and I thought really where Duke won the game was the end of the first half, and then the way they started in the second half. When you look at tie game, Caleb Love just hits a three. Arizona called a timeout, gave a chance for Duke to set up a play. Con Knippel gets open, top of the key, drills a three, and then the Caleb Love shot with about 5 seconds left in the game clock, really ill-advised shot. Arizona could have taken it down to the final shot of the half. He misses. Duke hurries, gets the rebound, throws it ahead, and then Cooper Flagg hits a three-pointer at the horn that gives Duke a 6-point lead. And then coming out of the half, they're able to build it up to 19. That's where the game was won for Duke, and the game was lost for Arizona. I really thought that big sequence going into halftime was big. And then Caleb Love, another ill-advised three-pointer to start the half. Duke turns it into a three-point play with an N1 from Kaman Malawach down the other end. That built a 9-point lead, and then, as I said, went up to a 19-point lead.
Yeah, they never really looked back. I mean, Arizona had a lot of life down the stretch. Myself and every Duke fan out there, we're getting nervous. We're trying to see how this game's going to unfold. We had reviews after reviews after reviews. We had fouls galore in a game like this for Duke basketball and for Arizona. I mean, the officiating is something, a storyline that people want to talk about. I don't want to get there yet, though. I do want to continue on that sequence, though, from Cooper Flagg. You look at the numbers in the first 12 minutes of that first half, he has just 3 points. He made his second three-point attempt, but one of the first buckets that Duke was able to score in the game was a three-pointer by Flagg. But then he scored 15 points in the final 7 minutes of the first half and really found himself getting into a rhythm and ended finishing the game with 30 points. That was huge to see Cooper take over the way that he did.
Yeah, listen, he's the best player in the country, right? I mean, you can debate other guys, but when it comes down to it, he is going to be the National Player of the Year. He's already the National Freshman of the Year and the ACC Player of the Year. So, he is the best player that this country has to offer. And you saw it tonight. You saw him get up and down the floor. In the first half, as you kind of said, that back half 10 minutes of the first half, he was scoring. You look after in the second half, he was more of a playmaker until he salted the game away at the free throw line late. Anything Duke needs, Cooper Flagg can deliver it. And once again, he showed why he is the best player in the country in this win over Arizona.
What was the building like? I mean, it was something to watch unfold when he hits that three going into half. We clearly saw the momentum that Duke had and how animated Cooper Flagg was following that one. He's trying to fire his teammates up. And really, throughout the course of the evening, what was the atmosphere like there for this Duke team?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I wouldn't put it on a similar atmosphere as maybe the game at Madison Square Garden when they played up in this area earlier in the year. I think maybe that was a little bit of a better atmosphere. Also, I think you have to remember this is a team that didn't make a field goal in the final 4+ minutes. They only made one field goal in the final 7.5 minutes. So that Cooper Flagg 3-pointer at the buzzer, that was kind of the biggest pop of the crowd in this game. And that was really the play that got everybody on their feet, that made some noise going into the locker room. And then I shouldn't say that. Second half, I mean, the crowd got loud. They got into it. But you didn't have that one major pop like you did on that 3-pointer at the Horn to end the first half.
It was 48-42 at the break. Duke basketball gave up 42 points in the first half. They tied the season high for most points given up in a first half with the UNC game that was played in Chapel Hill. When you evaluate that and really look at this game in a whole, seeing Arizona finish the game with 93 points on the night, defensively was kind of the one big thing to point to. What did you see there?
Well, I think it's tough when you break things down. And I should say that I think both teams struggle defensively. And again, we're not trying to pile on the officials or anything like that, but the way this game was called and the physicality and the heavy dose of whistles made it tough. When you look at Duke, I think the biggest thing in the first half defensively was kind of the offensive rebounds they continued to give up. I really thought that hurt them, and I didn't think it was anything Arizona was doing great on the glass. I think Duke just had a couple of rebounds slip out of their hands. They weren't in position. And I think that was kind of the biggest thing that hurt them on the defensive side of the floor in the first half. And you saw that tighten up in the second half. And then when Arizona went on their run, I should mention Caleb Love kind of highlighted some of his poor play in the first half that we did a couple minutes ago. He was phenomenal in this game outside of that little sequence for Arizona. And he was really tough for Duke to defend. And I think later in the game, you saw Sion James and Tyrese Proctor switch on to him, and Con Knipple kind of got the bad brunt of a really good effort from Caleb Love tonight. So I think those are kind of some of the things defensively where Duke kind of struggled in this game. But when they needed to, they came up with a couple of stops. And, I mean, allowing your opponent to put up 93 points, you're not going to say it was a good defensive performance. But Caleb Love, outside of that sequence early in the first half, I thought he was great and one of the better games he's played as a college player.
Because the three-point line is absolutely something that we will have to focus on when we start to look ahead to this game coming up against Alabama. I want to talk a little bit more about that three-point line shooting in tonight's game, and also taking a look at what Duke was able to do against Arizona at the free throw line as well. And we'll continue that portion of our conversation with Kevin Connelly after we take our first break here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today, brought to you by our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Daylight savings time snuck up on us again. And if you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5 Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you just need a little bit of a boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late watching these NCAA tournament games like Kevin and I currently are, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day in life, 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. Been staying up late so much, and that's why I love adding 5 Hour Energy to my day. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 different flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, pink mango, and so much more. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack and have it delivered right to your door. Do you need one now? Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They are everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized, if you will. 5 Hour Energy is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Our show today here is also brought to you by our friends over at Nissan. That's right, talking about our friends at Nissan. We're all about the stats because numbers don't lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP level. With the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. With room for up to 8 people, the Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X Learn more at nissanusa.com. Nissan is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Kevin Connelly's here with us from Ball Durham. We're talking about the Duke basketball victory over Arizona, 100-93 the final score. Duke was led by 30 points from Cooper Flagg. But you look at that 93-point total there for Arizona, and we haven't seen that much throughout the season. I mean, this has been a Duke team that's taken a whole lot of pride on what they're able to do on the defensive end of the floor, Kev.
No, it certainly has. And you look at the shooting numbers for Arizona, I mean, you could probably make an argument offensively. This could have been their best game of the season. I mean, they shoot almost 46% from the field. They shoot 46% from three-point range, and then they only miss 2 free throws out of 23. I mean, they did a great job, and you can make the argument, I mean, if they're playing, so there's 16 teams left, they're 15. If they're playing, 11, 12 of the other teams that are still left in this NCAA tournament, they probably win this game. I really have to tip my cap. I thought they had a great game plan, and then especially I love the fight that I saw in Arizona. Once Duke built that 19-point lead, I mean, you can kind of throw in the towel and say, all right, it's a good season, but it's just not our night. They're too good, and they didn't do that. They just kept fighting and fighting and fighting, and they got within 5 a couple of occasions. One came late in the final seconds, but there was a chance there. They got within 5, and they really put some game pressure on Duke, and Duke was ready for the moment, and they got to the free throw line, and they knocked them down, and they iced the game there, and that's how they came away with this 7-point win.
93 points is the most points that Duke has given up all season long. The most before that had been the Auburn and Notre Dame game where Duke gave up 78 points. So this is a 15-point adjustment there. Looking at the numbers and looking at, making the free throws and also the three-point line. 12 three-point makes for Arizona was tied for the second most on the year. Notre Dame had 14 against the Blue Devils in that game where they scored 78 points. But then Stanford and Georgia Tech, the game in the ACC tournament, those teams made 12 three-point shots against the Blue Devils. And then the second most free throws, Arizona made 21 shots from the free throw line. They earned them there, making it when they count 21 of 23 from the charity stripe. This is where we could start to talk about the officiating and just the number of attempts that they got there at the line. But they were knocking the free throws down when they needed to. And let's be honest, that's a way to build to your point total there, and that's a way for Arizona to have stayed in this game.
No, it 100% is, and I think they did a great job of that, especially in the second half, because, I mean, it's not either team's fault that the officials are calling a lot of fouls. And, I mean, I know a lot of these free throws came in the back half of the second half, but you look at the numbers, Arizona shot 10 free throws in the second half, Duke shot 22.
Yep.
So I think if you want to say that the officials weren't great, but you still look on the other side that Duke shot 22 free throws after halftime. So I do understand the concerns about the defense and the three-point shooting. And when everyone's eventually able to flip the page and turn to the next opponent in Alabama, well, they just broke an NCAA tournament record with made three-pointers in the game. So it's going to be – I'm not going to say it's an uphill battle because Duke will be the favorite in this game. Duke is the favorite to win the national championship, but they certainly have to shore things up if Alabama is going to shoot anywhere remotely close to what they did against BYU.
And foul trouble is something that you want to be aware of. I mean, Pat Gamba fouls out of this game. It's Kamen Malawach and Con Knippel, who each had 4 fouls in this one. We had Proctor and Sion James with 3 fouls. Cooper Flagg had, everybody, it felt like had the whistle going against them from the Duke perspective, but you just got to rally. You got to stay in it. You got to find ways to win. Really big sequence in this game in that second half was going to the TV media timeout and coming out of it when Arizona had an opportunity for an and one to cut it down to a 7-point game. They reviewed it, and there was a hook and hold called against Jaden Bradley, a flagrant foul where Con Knippel was able to go and knock down 2 shots. I thought that was a big sequence in the game there, Kev.
No, I definitely was. I think you could have some gripe that they should have called the foul before they were able to get that and one. Yeah. Because obviously then you would have wiped 3 points away off the board from Arizona when that's when they were mounting their rally. But I think you make a good point. That was a really big sequence in the game because you go down the other end, you shoot 2 free throws, and you get the basketball. So I think it does even out that N1 just a little bit. But that was a good point. That was, at least in my mind, watching the game live up close, that was one of the plays I said, I don't know if that really could have served as a foul. And then the other one was the offensive foul on Pat Gongba. I think it was shortly after that where he was trying to set a screen right at the top of the arc. and they got him for an offensive foul, and then they even reviewed it to see if that was a flagrant. They said, no, it was just a common foul. And then Arizona thought that they were going to get a 1-and-1 out of that, and John Shire kind of had to remind the referees that it was a side out of bounds and it wasn't free throws. So those are two of the plays in the second half that kind of stayed with me in my mind. But other than that, I think you can't put too much emphasis on the officials, even though in the moment, if you didn't really like the way they were calling the game.
Let's turn this thing positive, because it was a 6-point game at halftime. You mentioned the N1 from Malawach to open up the second half, and then Duke really kind of found themselves. And I think the reason they were able to do that was a lot of Cooper Flagg initiating the offense. He had a lot of lobs to Malawach and even Gongba there. What did you see for Duke to be able to build up to as large as a 19-point lead in this game?
You know, I think the biggest thing is Cooper Flagg and how much attention he draws.
Yeah.
I think even you look at the one play where Malawach missed the alley-oop dunk. I mean, it looked like Cooper Flagg was just going to take that and put a shot up and try to get it to go. But he realized that the double team came. Malawach was open on the weak side, threw up the lob, and unfortunately Malawach couldn't punch it home. But Duke was able to get the offensive rebound and end up shooting free throws off that possession. I think just everything caters around Cooper Flagg, especially what he can do offensively and how dangerous he is and how good of a playmaker he is, because it really doesn't have any weaknesses. He's a great shooter. He's a great facilitator. He's a great playmaker. He's a great passer. People said coming into college that probably his greatest attribute was his passing. And you really saw that in the second half. And one thing I also want to say about the second half is you kind of saw who John Shire's guys are, right?
Yeah.
We haven't mentioned Malik Brown, but Malik Brown plays in this game. He wasn't anywhere close to 100%. I wouldn't even say he was close to 75%. Didn't play in the second half. And you can kind of tell the way he was moving on the court. He was trying to avoid contact with that shoulder. But I thought the few minutes he played in the first half were good. And Pat Gongba had to play minutes before really his foul trouble forced him on the bench. But Cooper Flagg, Tyrese Proctor, Con Knipple, Common Malawach, and Sion James, those are the guys that John Shire is going to ride late in the second half of a tight game. And then you saw some minutes from Mason Gillis and, as I mentioned, Gongba. But it was clear tonight that those are the guys he's going to ride when he needs continuity out on the floor.
Yeah, just 4 minutes each for Malik Brown, Isaiah Evans, and Caleb Foster. But talking about Cooper Flagg, you said it, I'll echo it. He's the best player in the sport, tied his career high with 7 assists in this game to go along with 6 rebounds and the 30 points. Let's highlight somebody else, though. Who else in tonight's performance for Duke deserves some love from us, Kevin?
Well, we kind of already hit on Malawach. I thought that was big time. You know, the guy I'm really looking at is Sion James. He hit the big 3-pointer, that only field goal they had in the final 7.5 minutes or so. It was a 7-point Duke lead. He hits the corner 3, pushes it to 10, gave Duke some breathing room. And I think you also have to mention with Sion James, and it goes for a lot of the players on this roster. He's never been in this position before. I mean, playing at Tulane, this is his first NCAA tournament, obviously his first Sweet 16, and he goes
biggest game of his life.
Yeah, and he goes for 16 points and hits 3 of 4 from the outside and 5 of 6 from the field, and adds a couple of rebounds and 4 assists as well. So I think that's one player that we haven't mentioned that really played well tonight for Duke, and Sion James, and a player that they're going to need going forward, because when you look at Alabama has a lot of talented guards who can really shoot the ball, and primarily they're going to need his defense to kind of rise to the forefront and keep some of those Alabama guards away from the 3-point line.
Without a doubt, excited to see that game come up for sure. But again, just so impressed with what Duke was able to do in this game, in this win over Arizona. It's Con Knipple who adds 20 points for the Blue Devils. Duke, 11 made 3-pointers. And it was a point that you said a little bit earlier, Kevin, that I certainly agree with. Duke shooting 57% from 3-point range, 60% from the floor. So that was the most encouraging thing, is that, yes, while Arizona had a pretty good offensive day themselves, and that is something that Duke defensively will have to improve going into this next round and going forward as Duke tries to pursue the national championship. But the fact that they were able to be so secure and so great in their own right offensively, they are able to move on despite playing a little bit poor defensively. This is where we are grateful to have as productive and as efficient as an offense as we do have.
Yeah, don't get it twisted. This team does have a lot of room for error because of how good they are individually and at certain aspects of the game, like you said there with the offense. So I would imagine that the coaching staff will probably be up late tonight trying to figure out how they gave up 93 points, and they're going to play a team that scored, 113 points?
Yeah.
So I'd imagine there's not going to be a lot of sleep for them over these next whatever it is, 36 hours or so, because they are the late tip on Saturday night. I think it's not going to get started till about 8:50 Eastern time. So there's still a lot of work to be done for this team to try to advance to a Final Four, because I feel like some of the toughest games in the NCAA tournament is the round of 32 and the Elite Eight. I feel like those are your two biggest games, because you always want to make the second weekend. And the team you're playing in the round of 32, you both have that chance to get to the second weekend. That's why I think that's arguably the toughest game you could play in the NCAA tournament. And the same thing for the Elite Eight, because you know the Final Four is right there. You know that there's another week of practice in basketball that you're going to have to play. So it's going to be another tough game for Duke, and it's an Alabama team that brings back a lot of the players they had on their squad last year that went to a Final Four and still has that bad taste in their mouth. And I think you also have to remember this is a Duke team that had their season end in the Elite Eight last year against the same team that knocked them out in the ACC tournament. So that's another storyline to look at, it that Duke gets back to the Elite Eight, a place where they couldn't get over the hump last year. And now with just about a completely new team, although they bring back Tyrese Proctor and Caleb Foster, they're right back at the same place that they were 365 days ago.
The 25th time in Duke history they're able to go to the Elite Eight, and hopefully they're able to punch their ticket into the Final Four as Duke knocks off Arizona. Our big storyline this week was that, hey, these two teams are totally different from earlier in the season in November when they first met. What was also different was the game that we saw, a game in November where the final score was 69-55. They combined for 124 points. How about we combine for 193 tonight? A crazy game between the Blue Devils and Arizona. Again, the early morning hours. It's a Friday episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Now we got to talk about Saturday's Elite Eight matchup between Duke and Alabama, and we'll continue our conversation with Kevin Connelly after we take our final break here on today's episode. Locked On Blue Devils here tonight, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is the absolute best. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the best chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. I absolutely love using FanDuel this time of year to check out on all of the best action. The app is so easy and simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. You can join on the fun too as well. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. FanDuel is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
That's Andy Patton and Isaac Shea from Locked On College Basketball. They're going to have plenty to say about Duke heading to the Elite Eight. Awesome stuff that we saw tonight from this Duke basketball team. Go check out and support the Bracket Breakdown show. Let's get back to our episode today of Locked On Blue Devils. Kevin Connelly's here. We're talking Duke and Alabama going to the Elite Eight. All right, let's get to Alabama. You were in the building tonight for this one at the Prudential Center. 113-88, the final score. We knew defense was going to be optional going into this first meeting. We didn't know that'd be the case for both of the games that would be played tonight there in New Jersey. But holy cow, man, 113 total points for the Crimson Tide and an NCAA tournament record, 25 three-pointers made. That is immediately the one kind of big storyline and thing to focus on when you start to think about this Elite Eight game between Duke and Bama.
I mean, there had to be like magnets at the bottom of the net tonight, right here in the Prudential Center.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't do quick math, but it had to be close to 400 total points scored between the two games. I mean, that is like NBA level numbers that you're getting here. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to say about what Alabama did offensively. You mentioned it with the three-pointers, setting an NCAA tournament record. I think then after you talk about them, you have to talk about what Mark Sears did, and 34 points, and 10 of them coming from beyond the arc. I mean, that was just a sensational performance. And anytime he put the ball up, you thought it was going in. And then you go a little bit further down on their roster, and a guy like Aiden Holloway, who came in averaging less than 12 points per game, he goes for 23, and he hit 6 3-pointers as well. So you know what Alabama wants to do. They want to shoot 3-pointers, and BYU was kind of the same way. And Alabama beat them at their own game. And Alabama is certainly more talented. They have guys that up front as well that can really bang. When you look at Grant Nelson, although he has been injured over the past couple of games, and then Cliff Omarui, a transfer from Rutgers who didn't have that big of a performance tonight against BYU because of 25 3-pointers. So I think there's a couple of games a couple of ways, I should say, that Alabama can beat a team. And are they going to shoot 51 3-pointers again? They might, because that's how they play. Are they going to make 25 of them? I would have to bet against that, because they just broke an NCAA tournament record. Are they going to break their own record 36 hours later? I don't know. But certainly it'll be a big-time matchup to see.
And that's going to be the number one thing on the scouting report for John Shire and his staff, is like, how do we take away these 3-point looks for Alabama? I mean, if you get into a 3-point shootout, I'd like to think that Duke's got the shooters to keep up with it, but that hasn't really been how Duke's been playing as of late. I really like what we saw tonight with Flagg kind of initiating it. Con Knipple has done a lot of it down the stretch for this Duke team. Even Sion James, like, utilizing Duke's size inside, because they are still the tallest team in America, the tallest team left in the big dance. Let's get Gongba and Malawach involved there on the short rolls, attack the rim, and knock down the shots from the outside too. I just feel like Duke is going to do every single thing possible to make sure it's not the 3-point line that ultimately is the thing that defeats them.
I also think you have to look at Duke has bigger and better athletes than BYU, kind of what you were alluding to.
Fair,
and BYU just couldn't keep up with them physically and athletically. And Alabama was putting them in, as you said, screen and rolls, and they were able to get any shot they wanted. Duke, I don't think, will have that problem, because they have big and good athletes out on the perimeter that can hang with some of these quick and shifty Alabama guards. So I think that's a big difference when you're looking at the way BYU defended Alabama compared to the way Duke could defend the Crimson Tide.
The numbers are, I mean, they had 51 3-point attempts. They made 25. They have 51 3-point attempts on 66 total shots from the floor. 51 of their 66 shots were from the 3-point line, man.
I mean, they only made 10 2-pointers. I think that's. I think someone put a stat up. If Alabama didn't make a 2-pointer in this game, they still would have won. I mean, they made 35 shots, and 25 of them were from 3-point range. So, yeah, again, it's obviously a shooting display that we've never seen before in an NCAA tournament game. Can it happen 2 times in a row? I think that's obviously the big question coming into this game.
And now for Alabama, we talk about for Duke, their scouting report is, hey, let's figure out a way to get Alabama off the 3-point line and try to find the ways for them to beat us elsewhere. I think for Duke, or for Alabama, excuse me, their scouting report now is, what are we going to do about Cooper Flagg? How can we slow this guy down? Because he is the best player in the sport.
You know, I don't know if I haven't seen really anybody do this, but like, I wonder if like, and Alabama's not a good defensive team to begin with. Let me start there. But it's like, hey, let's let Flagg do whatever he wants. Don't let the other guys beat you. Don't let Sion James go off. Don't let Akum and Malawach go off. If Cooper Flagg wants to go one-on-one every possession, let him do it. And if he scores 40, who cares? Because that's only 40 points on the scoreboard for Duke. I'm curious to see if Alabama takes a position like that. Say, hey, let him do whatever he wants. It's the other guys that we're going to really focus on and try to stop them. Not that I'm saying that would be a good strategy, because these coaches obviously know a lot more about trying to stop this guy than I do. But that's just something I would think of. Like, hey, let him do what he wants to do. But we're going to put a focus on stopping everybody else. But I think the one thing Duke should try to exploit is Grant Nelson, because obviously everyone knows he is not healthy. And he was back in the starting lineup today for Alabama. You look at the first round of the NCAA tournament, Alabama got really scared by Robert Morris. Robert Morris had a lead in the second half of that game. And Nate Oates, I wouldn't say it was panic or desperation, but knowing that they had to win, he put Grant Nelson on the floor for a spurt. So I think the matchup with Grant Nelson, of whoever he matches up with, because if he's healthy, I would have to think he would get the assignment on Cooper Flagg. So I think obviously that's really something to watch. Grant Nelson against whoever Alabama tries to put on him or put him on for Duke in that first half of the Elite Eight game.
Duke and Alabama both victorious in the Sweet 16. Florida and Texas both win. That's your other Elite Eight matchup that we'll see on Saturday. This is our Friday, March 28th episode of Locked On Blue Devils. So Friday night, you've got 4 more Sweet 16 games to be aware of. Auburn and Michigan, Ole Miss versus Michigan State, Tennessee and Kentucky, and then Purdue and Houston. Should be some really good basketball for you. And then, Kevin, as you mentioned, we now know Saturday, the Elite Eight game between Florida and Texas Tech will tip off at 6:09 p.m. Eastern, slating Duke and Alabama to start at 8:49 p.m. Eastern. And I know that you're going to have tons of work over there at Ball Durham, right? How can people support you?
Yeah, we'll be all over it over at balldurham.com. Come read us every single day. We got content going up in the middle of the night. We got content going up early in the morning and content throughout the day as Duke gets set for this Elite Eight game against Alabama. So come read us over at balldurham.com. And you can follow us on social media at ball_Durham.
Great to see you, Kevin. Thanks for being here today.
Appreciate it, JJ.
All right, that's Kevin Connelly joining us here on this episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Thanks so much to you guys for your support. I hope that we have more wins to talk about for Duke in this NCAA tournament and March Madness run. What a win this was over Arizona. Now we turn our attention to Alabama. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. As always, go Duke. We'll talk to you on Monday. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.